Here is the Klarhet Shift podcast, brought to you by Klarhet Compass. From strategy to transformation, we help business deliver results. AI is everywhere, and yet most organizations are still struggling to adopt it in ways that deliver real value. Too often, the push for AI begins with pressure from the top. We need an AI strategy. But without clarity on why AI matters for this business and these teams, adoption becomes shallow. Some companies rush to deploy tools like Copilot or Gemini without a plan, offering no training, no context, and no support. When those tools go unused or misunderstood, leaders are somehow surprised. Others jump into AI through the wrong door, pursuing high-risk moonshot projects before they've built trust or learned to walk. We've seen automation framed as the goal, when the real opportunity is broader, to rethink how work gets done, how value is delivered, and how people spend their time. But that kind of reinvention starts with intent. It demands thoughtfulness, not just about technology, but about behavior change, expectations, and buy-in. So today we're asking, why are you really doing this? What problems are worth solving? And how do you bring your people with you, instead of leaving them behind? I've invited Matt Barnes and James Stovall from WorkFast Consulting to talk with us today. Matt Barnes is the managing partner at WorkFast Consulting, driven by a desire to serve others and backed by over 20 years of experience in consulting and coaching. Matt has developed WorkFast Consulting to help businesses, nationally and internationally, to not only meet their goals, but also to build confidence and hone skills through every level of the organization. Matt is a veteran of the U.S. Navy, having served with Naval Mobile Construction, Battalion 7, and at the Camp David Presidential Retreat. Matt earned his undergraduate degree in industrial engineering from Georgia Tech and his master's in business administration from the UNC Keenan-Flagler Business School. James Stovall is a seasoned business advisor with a focus on transformation, AI workforce strategies, and innovation. With over 2 decades of experience advising clients, including a decade at Deloitte, James is known for his pragmatic, data-driven approach to solving complex organizational challenges. Most recently, he developed the AI Future of Work offering for Randstad's advisory practice. His clients have included top organizations like Google, Amazon, J&J, Merck, Cisco, Coca-Cola, Aflac, Kaiser, Nike, and Dollar General. James has led multi-million-dollar change management projects, implemented new technology and processes, and regularly advises clients on their most challenging transformations. He also hosts innovation days to bring fresh insights and identify new opportunities for clients. He's also a graduate of Georgia Tech. Go Yellow Jackets. All right, Matt and James, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Alex.
Yeah, great to be here.
So AI, why are we doing this? It seems an easy enough question. I mean, AI is the future, or rather the present, but is it not enough that a CEO or an investor wants you to start doing AI?
Yeah, Marianne, it's interesting. I don't know if anything else in the business world works well when it's just the CEO that wants it. So I don't think AI would as well, in addition, and it's probably something that's new to everybody and more complex. One of the things that we talk about a lot is that this transformation is about change and people. And like any strategy, if you want it to be successful, then people all the way down to frontline workers, all the way up to frontline workers, need to be behind it and understand it and be able to execute it. And so the CEO may drive the initiative, they may give the intent, they may give the direction, the vision, but ultimately all the people in the organization have to execute it and make it come to fruition.
The why is really important. So it's a great starting question, Marianne, that if the CEO or the board says, hey, I just need to have a story for AI to tell the public, or I need to, want to have this to tell my, private equity owner or whatever it may be, that's going to get a very different thing to say, hey, I'm looking to drive innovation and transform our business, and AI is a tool to achieve that. So I think that's a really big difference that we think about. And some people are saying, I only want to look at it from a cost savings perspective, when really we'll show some data, but that later we can talk through. But to say that we're seeing organizations that if you're only looking to make efficient, only about less than half the organizations are actually realizing that original intent of driving efficiency. But a lot of are gaining benefits, like, for example, bringing new innovation to their businesses or new services. So we like to say, what if you had an army of 500 interns that were working for you? How would that change your business or what services that you offer? And that's a great way to think about it.
It's such a strategic question. And in a lot of strategy sessions, you hear phrases like, well, what's the why behind the why? So how do you get at the why when you're talking with your clients?
I think it's a great mix. And when we start off by asking some questions and to say, sometimes it's about who we're talking to. So, for example, just in the last week, we had a conversation with the chief people officer. And so she's seeing that this is a big organizational change and that their organization needs to change. But she sees, as the people leader, that there needs to be a change in their culture to adopt and to change the job responsibilities in the organization before that's forced upon her, that she can be a proactive change agent in that. So that's a very different reason, understanding kind of where they're coming from. Or with another client where we were talking with an IT leader, and they're thinking about it because a lot of people just say, hey, this is technology, so IT, you need to lead this and need to figure something out. And so we say, hey, that's great. But by the way, this is a business change, and we need to have your business partners who are actually going to help drive that. It doesn't matter how hard IT pushes, but if you don't think about the way work is being done and think about how you want to transform, you're not going to see the results you want.
So a component of it is readiness for the change, what you're
Definitely.
saying.
I think that's a huge part. Um, that if you think, like, the technology is moving so fast. I mean, Chat GPT 5 just came out. There's new versions. And when we would do AI workshops with clients, even at the beginning of this year, the functionality that we were showing about what could be done in the tools they were using is very different than today. But to say, so the technology is changing so fast, but the organizations and even the individual people have trouble absorbing it at the pace at which technology is changing. And so it's a very challenging time. So I'd actually say that people and organizational change is often slower and harder and more important than just getting the technology picked out right.
What are the tools people need to help to get the people ready? That's what I would do as a project manager in program delivery. I'd make sure all the right people were at the table. But what are the
Well, what
this
is
is very scary for folks. So I'm just
Yeah.
yes.
what are the crutches that are out there? What's
Yeah.
in the tool belt for them?
Well, one of the first things we like to start with when we kick the training, the workshops we do off, is we talk about growth mindset and being ready to fail and learn, and adjust, and just being okay with that it's a new thing. And yeah, for some people, it's really scary. A lot of people, they think the first thing thinking about AI is something negative, like it's going to take my job, or it's something that somebody uses to steal my ideas or my intellectual property or whatever. And then you have the opposite, end of the spectrum, where you have some people that are like, hardcore first adopters, and they're first movers, and they want to get after it. And you'll have those people and that whole spectrum in the same room, talking about AI. And it's actually kind of useful because you see different perspectives, you see different people coming from different places in the organization, and where they're at in terms of their understanding, their openness to using AI. And then you can kind of work from there, and create some. What we like to try to do is kind of start at basics and then build it more advanced skills. So just general prompting techniques and capability, and then eventually get into building agents and multi-agent systems, and more complex things that people do. And it's interesting. There are a lot of people that are very technical, but
Mhm.
there are many more that aren't. So, you may have somebody that's a data scientist in the room, and they are going to do something completely different with it than somebody who's maybe an administrative assistant. But the same principles apply. And so, I think you see that as you work through these things.
I would also jump in to say that I talk to people obviously professionally about this, but also just being I was at a party this weekend and talking to people who are high level professionals in a variety of different things. And it had exactly the types of things that you talked about, Marianne, where some people were not open to that. And I would say that's a real key to say, where are your people today? So we usually like to do a pre-survey with people to say, where do you see yourself? How are you using AI today? Are you using it to do interesting and complex things? Or most of the people that we run into often are using AI as help me write emails, work as a glorified search engine, and doing some very basic things, which is great. It's certainly a good start. But to say, can we take it to the next level and really use AI to evolve what you're doing and make yourself essentially what we say is to magnify your intent. So that would be the tool that I would say a lot of I come from, the Deloitte consulting world. And so saying a lot of the change management principles, like a change readiness assessment, where is your head today and what are you looking at? Because we run into
Right.
some people who right out of the gate have an objection about this and are saying, hey, this AI didn't work because, it didn't follow the instructions. And we're saying, well, yeah, let's look at your prompt together. And sometimes as we dive into it to find, oh, you're using these very specialized acronyms and you gave it a 300 file folder and you're asking it to find through and look at a scanned image and it's not going to be there. So if you want to try to
Right.
make it not work to show that it doesn't work and not really understand how it works, I think you can get to that solution. So how can you go
Yeah.
along the way and have, like what Matt said, that growth mindset to say, the example I would use is, what if you talk to someone who is an older relative, let's say, and it was 25 years ago, and they said, I never want to use the internet. I don't want to use email, all of that. That's just a waste of time. I'm going to operationalize and improve my logistics without using the internet. That we'd look back and say, well, that's probably not a good idea. What advice would you give to that older relative in your life? And then why not take that advice yourself for this new technology that's coming in 25 years later?
Right. It occurs to me, I've been through a number of digital transformations, enterprise migrations, and one of the big things that we would say or I'd hear is something to the effect of, we're not just doing a lift and shift, meaning we're not just going to take the old way of doing business and inject it into this new system that could do it so much better. And I think that's probably 100 times fold with AI because there's such an opportunity to just transform the way you do business.
I totally agree. I think a lot of people, even people who are thinking about AI in sophisticated ways, even if you go in with tunnel vision, there's a Deloitte study, and I think maybe I can send a graphic that we can share. That's basically looking. They did, I think, 2,700 organizations and say, what were your expectations? Going back to that, why are you doing this question? Going into an AI transformation. So, like you might expect, I think it was like 55% said, I would want to see efficiencies come from that, but only about 40% of those organizations ended up realizing those efficiencies. But
Wow.
only a quarter of the companies went in saying, I'm going to uncover new ideas and insights. But almost half of half of organizations ended up identifying those even when they're not trying to discover it. So we talk to companies to say, how would you think outside the box? Like there's a silly example we use. You might have seen that there's a Los Angeles dentist, and with the AI videos coming out, they decided to make an AI video ad with Bigfoot. And you're like, what does this have to do with a dentistry? And it's a little, story.
Mhm.
It's a little bit crude about like a Bigfoot character that goes skydiving and is doing all this. It's just a silly video that's somewhat entertaining. And then they get their teeth knocked out while skydiving into a forest and then have to go to cosmetic dentistry and they go to this dentist. And you're like, this is just a crazy idea. But that dentist, those videos received 600,000 views in 3 days and
Wow.
really brought a huge market to
Yeah.
that for something that you weren't even thinking about. So it's thinking outside the box like that, or in a completely different universe. One of our clients does very large public projects. And so we said, what if instead of just using AI to be more efficient at the nature of the work that you're already doing, what if for those large public projects that you would also, as part of your advice that you would give, say, we'll give a PR campaign to the citizens of those communities that you're doing the projects in and can write all the communications and build the website. And you have a whole new service offering that maybe differentiates you from a competitor. And they said, this is fantastic. This is not something we would have thought about because your mind goes to, how do I do the things I'm already doing better? Not saying,
Yeah.
how can I use AI to change what I'm doing?
That's awesome. Having worked in local government, I'm sure that was very much appreciated by their clients.
Definitely. And again, and governments can probably take advantage of that as well to say, how can we
Yeah.
think about outside the box about what we're doing as well? It presents a lot of great opportunities.
Yeah.
Even then, the challenge we'll get into is are people willing to change? Or do they want to change what they're doing, the way they're doing things? Um, are they going to throw up resistance because they're afraid that it may eventually eliminate their job? So that's a leadership challenge. There's a very deep leadership challenge in all this that has to be solved as well.
Yeah,
So
I agree that leadership is changing too. I feel like it's a real movement where even think about like what were the skills that you would look for. So maybe 5 years ago you might hire for some knowledge about certain subject areas, which is still important in certain areas. But now maybe knowledge and just core skills that you could look up information and synthesize it more quickly becomes less important. But that what we call learning agility and adaptability to be able to change with changing process and technology, I think becomes more and more important. And certainly you're seeing if you just look at the LinkedIn data, AI literacy and AI in job descriptions is increasing at an incredible rate in terms of the jobs that we're seeing posted out there.
certainly is. Yeah. Uh, so we've talked a little bit about people who might be fearful or reticent, hesitant. Choose your barrier. What about those who see no barriers and storm headlong into that one project that everybody talks about 20 years later saying you don't want to do that?
Yes. Uh, I,
Have you encountered that yet?
Yeah.
I
I
would
haven't.
say,
I have
Yes, we
not.
did.
But
And it didn't go well. But in some ways you want to applaud the initiative to go after the hard stuff, but you have to make sure that you have a foundational knowledge first. You have to understand that you've counted the cost and you know what it truly means. You have to have a clear vision, which some companies don't. They just want to do AI for the sake of AI, which I think you alluded to earlier.
Mhm.
And then underlying all this is still business. So you have to do some sort of business case analysis and understand if it follows your strategy, if it's the technology that's right for the job, if it's all the things that we've always traditionally done when we do some type of IT transformation projects. Who's involved? How many people is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? How long is it going to take? And what's the result we think we're going to get out of this? So if you're going for the home run, but you have not yet gone to batting practice, you might want to rethink that strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's two components of what you're saying, Marianne. There's the ethical side of should we do it just because we can do it, and there's ability to do things that can cause that side. So there's a whole AI ethics part, and that's an interesting field that's certainly developing, where AI does not necessarily always have the best judgment, and also generally the people who have bad ideas, AI can just magnify their intent, like the internet could magnify the bad intent. So it's not that AI is new in that. It's just the latest technology in doing that, in my opinion. So I think there's the ethics side. And second, what Matt was hitting at, we're saying the home run versus going for the single. The most common thing we see of the Head Start person who's going to jump in is to say, I've got this big, huge problem that if I solve it, it's going to, transform everything. But it's an incredibly high risk and high volume part. And they're jumping
Yeah.
immediately to that project rather than saying, let's build some wins and again, allow the organization to adopt to that and maybe start working on the bigger project and scoping it. But also to say, show some quick wins so there are people who are skeptics when you have a very complex and high risk project that you don't immediately start there and then you may dismiss all the other AI transformation that could happen in your organization because you don't see the success immediately that you wanted to from that project.
And
Got it.
I'll add to that, if you don't mind, that we
Yeah.
primarily work with small and mid-sized businesses. So there may be companies out there that are global companies that have deep pockets, and maybe that's fine. Maybe they have an R&D department or something like that, and that's their whole purpose is to go out and try to do these incredible things. But typically, the clients we're working with don't have a lot of extra people and a lot of extra money to waste or throw at potential home runs that turn out not to be home runs.
Those larger companies also have the risk and compliance shops that are going to make sure that they don't get over their skis.
Right.
So
Yes.
that yeah. Anyway, James, I interrupted you. Go
No,
ahead.
no, no, no. We were saying at the same time. I was going to say similar. There's the risk side, but also the big companies to make a change like that. It's a really big change. While the superpower that like a medium-sized business is that if you can get a leader who says "Let's go," they can be more nimble than some of these large organizations that have to get a lot of approvals and do that right. Again, I'm talking with friends and colleagues who are like, I have this great idea that AI would be a great use case, and they're trying to make the case to get money for like small things like a $400 a year license to get to the AI tool. And they're like, I'm ready to go. I'm building the business case and I
Yeah.
just got to, fight to get my organization moving down this path.
So that that organization gets their $400 tool. They run a successful pilot. Sometimes it just stalls out. What did they miss? It just stays in pilot purgatory, if you will.
Mhm.
Uh,
I would say yes, the statistics have that play out. I mean, depending on whose statistics you're looking at, that it's a 70 to 85% of projects fail in the terms that they don't make it to full in AI because they don't make it to full enterprise deployment. I think part of that is that framing of that part to say, does it need to go to enterprise deployment to be a successful AI project? But that's a separate side. I would say there's a lot of different reasons of why AI projects fail. So it's some of that about what's the intent of what does that look like, the right problem selection. I think that a lot of people fall in love with an AI solution. It's very common that our clients come to us and say, "Hey, we just saw this great thing," and then as we dive into it, that it doesn't really solve the main thing that they want, but it is a very flashy solution. So we recommend to fall in love with the problem rather than falling in love with the solution. I think that's a very common mistake that we see. And then another one is
Interesting.
just,
Okay.
yeah,
Fall in love with
not
the
getting,
problem. I usually
yes.
encounter people who are too busy admiring the problem.
It depends. I mean, there's so many different point solutions. I mean, if you go to an AI conference, you're overwhelmed with the number of
But
solutions that are out there.
I take your point. The business value is in solving that problem and understanding why that problem needs to be solved. So, as
Mhm.
opposed to just finding a solution in search of a problem.
100%. That happens a
Yeah.
lot. And then I would also just say the people side. So we've had ones where a client, we're building a custom AI model to do something for that. And they're saying, look, we just don't want to disrupt business operations. Can you build this solution? But let's not talk with the people who are in this process because it's going to be changing like 40% of their job. And we just don't want them to stress. And we're doing that. We're saying, yes, but at some point we're going to share them. The intent is for them to keep working and to focus on the 60% of their job. And if we
Yeah.
have that conversation, then you're going to be able to make that. So it's being, in my opinion, transparent about again why you're doing it. We keep coming back to that, and then also to say, hey, let's involve the people whose jobs this is going to impact, so they can see what's going to happen and how that's going to impact it. And again, for many people, I think a lot of people have that fear of it taking my job, but if people are like, hey, I'm going to take the most boring, repetitive, dull work that I do and get that out of my life. If you said instead of efficiency to say, I'm going to eliminate the worst part of your job and let you focus more on the best and let you really use your superpowers, that's a much more inspiring and empowering story.
Yeah. Going back to like what you're asking earlier, I think it's similar to other projects or types of pilots that fell. An AI pilot, it may be AI, but it's no different than an ERP pilot or something else you may have done in the past, where if you don't have the people, the process all aligned behind that, you don't understand what you're trying to accomplish, it's not going to be successful ultimately. It's just a new technology that we're able to use much differently. It's got unbelievable capability, but it still comes down to people and process and what is the outcome you're looking for and can you achieve that.
There are businesses out there who would look at their data and say, there is no way we're ready to do anything with AI.
So you have to have all the data perfect before you can do the AI project.
Well, so yes, I want to talk about that concept of you don't want pristine data. You do want messy data, but you don't want awful data. I mean, what should people be thinking about data in that regard?
I think there's a couple things. I mean, I know there's a couple stories that Matt and I are both that we experienced together to see. But I'll use one to say one. It's really important to have clean data. So, for example, okay, you want to project pricing using an AI model about what should your pricing be based upon this, and we go back and look at the historical data, and as we're going through it to say, hey, there's this data in here that shows a negative transaction. I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah, that's just an accounting thing. Okay, but this is the data we're feeding to this AI model. And so if it has a negative transaction, that's going to cause confusion in the model. And we got to make sure that if there's certain things that you're doing, that really represents reality. Otherwise, you're going to get an AI model that's not based in reality. So that'll be a big problem.
Okay.
I think you have to, it's kind of what James is saying. You have to prioritize what is most important in the data as well. Like if you have one data feed that you know is mediocre, but it's not going to impact greatly what you're doing, then maybe you just deal with that later and go ahead and get whatever gains you can out of the other data. I mean, and you don't have to have perfect data. It will impact it, but it doesn't have to be perfect. So if you're thinking about not doing not bringing AI capability into your organization until all your data is perfect. You may never do any AI integration into your
Right.
organization. Data is never going to be perfect, right? You're always going to have some issues, and you need to make sure you have a team that's looking at that, managing that. But it's going to be specific to each use case and each application as to what quality it truly needs to be, and what can the different AI tools that are available out there do with it to account for errors, bring other unstructured data in to help with that, more contextual information, that sort of thing. So a lot of it's very particular to what are you actually doing with the AI project, to how clean does the data really need to be.
Gotcha.
I think that's a good takeaway too for your listeners to say, even if you're not ready to, jump into the big AI project, having an AI first mindset to start to say, what can I start doing to collect and structure my data today to be ready for the future AI tool, even if that tool is not on the market today. So as an example, some of our clients have files and filing cabinets that are important files that they want to be making decisions. So, hey, we need to start building, a program to collect this data, or, it's on whatever the local shared drive as opposed to SharePoint. Or, hey, it's stored in SharePoint, but you know what? We have all of our contracts and they're scanned images because they want the ink signature on the contract that AI ultimately doesn't care about. What if you had the text version of that PDF? Or we need to think about OCR software to be able to pull that data and use it to get to the right tools that may not have that OCR built in to start being ready for that future AI initiative that's coming.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I've talked to some like small business owners recently that they don't even really care that much about their old data. They're looking at new ways to collect data, like customer information and market information, that sort of thing. They're almost like looking at like, yeah, I'll just leave that behind and just skip ahead. So again, it depends on what you're trying to do and what the application is.
Let's dig into deciding where to start. What types of projects are you looking for?
I think it's first, again, like we said, we try to fall in love with the problem rather than come in and say, hey, you should do this. So I think it's a mix of saying, let's hear the pain point. So for example, a client comes in and says, we do a lot of business related to this spreadsheets, and we create these spreadsheets for each client. It has a lot of meaningful data and we do a lot of things for that. We say, okay, well, that's one that we could probably use AI to, come in and kind of look at the things that are most important to them. So I think there's that element of that to say, like, let's hear your pain points, but also to say it's sometimes organizations where they're like, hey, I'm working with a technology like AutoCAD and I want to do something great with AI with AutoCAD, to say, are the AI tools there to be able to do the specific thing that you're looking for? And just because that's a meaningful problem does not necessarily mean that the technology is there. So I think that would be my point number two. And then number three would be, can you pick the use case based on function? Salesforce posted a really interesting study where they went through and looked at where internal organization CIOs rank the departments across AI criteria of three different areas of, do they have the AI use cases? Do they have the enthusiasm to do AI? And are they ready from a data perspective and organizational perspective to do that? So it was
That's a good
interesting.
three.
Yeah. So something like, for instance, like for HR, their use cases were not super high. Their enthusiasm was pretty low, but in terms of data readiness, because their data has to be clean to pay all the people and have the right, address of where to send the check and all of that, they have really good data for certain things that they can do to be able
Mhm.
to run that. Where, maybe like customer service, there's really great use cases for customer service, but their enthusiasm is pretty low. And then depending on the organization, it can be mixed. So I think that's the interesting to figure out that trifecta of ones. And again, that's just generalized data, but where it is specifically for your organization.
One of the things that James and I've talked about in the past with clients is looking at each person as an individual innovation engine. And so that would be an approach as well as and we do this in workshops. It's take a look at your job and almost do like a mental inventory of what are the things that are holding you back. And I think James may have alluded to it earlier with the things you don't want to spend time on, but you have to spend time on, non-value
Mhm.
added work that you're doing, and try to pick those things off with some of the basic AI tools. And that's much different than doing a big transformational AI project, but it can be transformational in its own right if every one of your employees is saving 2 to 4 hours a week, or the quality is a lot better of what their output is. You can see some real tremendous gains that way. I saw a speaker last week, and she was talking about minimizing, almost like decluttering. It's like a
Yeah.
decluttering of your work life, right? And she was talking about packing your backpack with rocks. What rocks can you throw out so you can climb higher on the mountain? And so I think that's a similar concept, maybe with like personal AI use in the workplace or even at home. So
Yeah,
Yeah, and hopefully it's also when you do that, you're just taking the rocks out and you're not asking AI to do some of those because if it's
yeah,
not you said
that's right.
non-value added work, I'm like, "Hmm,
Yeah,
then why are we doing this?"
yeah,
But
but it's surprising how much of that exists out there is the
yeah,
one thing I would
yeah,
say is that everybody does, pretty much all employees have 10 to 15%, I would say at least minimum, that's just administration, entering their timesheets, whatever, doing basic
status
things that they
reports,
have to do
etcetera.
exactly for their job. And it's a little different by each job, but there's all that there. But there's a lot of work that's like, for example, hey, I need to, write a report for my boss each week. Okay, well, is we could have AI write the report each week, but is the boss actually reading the report? Are they taking actions on that? Or is this a one-time thing 6 months ago and they just never bothered to say, hey, by the way, I haven't really been reading the report you've been creating for the last 3 months. So I think that's why when we see a lot of ties between AI and continuous improvement, because it's going through and not just saying, hey, let's pick the big work products, but also say, can we help think about the culture of work and really redefining what the future of work is that will change your processes. It'll change your roles and your job descriptions, and ultimately could change your organizational structure about how you use AI.
Yeah,
I would also just add, thinking about like how it's just changing work and what that means. It's also changing the way work is done. Like we're in consulting, but it's really changing for like the big four consultants, thinking about their projects and how, again, imagine that, in my past, maybe there'd be a 25-person consultant team doing change management for a large Fortune 500 organization. But now a lot of things they were doing executive interviews, summarizing the notes into findings, doing surveys, writing communications, building plans, that work can be really accelerated. So the number of teams to do that transformation project and the amount of duration that it takes to do those projects is a lot less. And that's why I see AI as not just the newest technology, but it's really accelerating the intent. And it's just the pace of change, even though it feels fast today, it's going to get even faster, is what
yeah.
I predict.
And it's not necessarily that we're doing more with less, we're just in some cases, we're just doing more. So
yeah,
it's not like you're stripping away staff. The staff are just able to do things that are more valuable.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Klarna was an example of that. I think that they, in 2024, they announced that they weren't going to do any hiring, and just as attrition came up, they continue to do that. Now they had a very heavy customer service focused organization, so there was a lot of very repeatable work that could be used. And now they've since the spring had an about face and say we do need to hire people because some of our customers do prefer direct human customer service, and there's certain things that need to be done that way. But I think it's thinking about that mindset and saying, how do we think about work in the way and say there's certain things where we really want to have humans involved and to do that. And I think in general, people, I think, want a higher level of humans involved in their work. And obviously humans individually want to have agency in their own work. But can you think about those things that are the non-value add, that 20% that goes across, 30 different employees, that's just as good as just people think about eliminating one job instead of eliminating that swath of work across all your employees.
Yeah, I was at a at Atlanta AI Week in the spring, and there was a customer experience panel, and one of the panelists talked about AI taking care of all those things that AI does best so that we can be more human.
I think people think of like calling up like onto a phone and talking to an automated person and some bad experiences in the past. But think about if you have to like pay, change your cell phone plan or your cable plan or something like that, need to call into a call center. How nice would it be to say, this is my intent, and let your, AI or agent go and
yeah.
talk to those people and come back and say, give me the options. Now I can look at the options and at my convenience make the change to the plan and instruct that. Think about those types of things that you really don't enjoy doing and to say, can we get AI to do that? But I will say
That's
the one
great.
other thing that does happen is sometimes we have people, I see organizations where they have a role and say that it's 80% administrative and maybe it's, 10% kind of relationship business partner and 10% strategic. And they're like, okay, we're going to get rid of the administration and really focus on that 20% and then find the people in those jobs don't really like doing the strategic and the relationship work, or they're not very good at it. And so then you have to think about, again, it's not just about just like replacing work. It's about thinking about how you redesign the organization with the future of work and what really that means there.
Something else to think about too is there is a cost to do an AI. It's not just free, right? So
Yeah.
you're spending money, you're investing resources, you're investing money, and you're investing time. So you need to think about how to measure success, and if it's better quality, uh, higher productivity, more revenue, lower cost overall, you should be looking at those things and thinking about that and evaluating if your AI program, if you're running an AI program, if it's actually effective or not, and then adjusting it if it's not effective to make sure it is. And then maybe that's more training for people, maybe it's better understanding of the tools, maybe so you don't have the right tools in place, that kind of thing. So
Yeah, we see a number of organizations that come to us and say, we've spent this much on Gemini or Copilot or Chat GPT licenses, and we're paying premium for all these people, but like we're not really seeing that. So what do we do? And oftentimes it's because yes, it's been rolled out, but at what level of rolling out and education about what that would be, or people just discovering themselves, and people who are basically going out and finding on their own, or sometimes not finding those resources to be able to make that. So I think really thinking about you're not it's if you just turn on and get premium AI licenses for people in your company, you're not going to see a return and you could lose money doing this. But we found that with organizations that do it, in my opinion, the right way, and how they roll out AI, that it's like, hey, this is a no brainer. And we did this workshop with you on Thursday. If we did it on Tuesday, we'd have already paid for the workshop.
that's right. That's right.
Okay. So a workshop to train people. What are other ways to make sure? Because I just rolled out Copilot. I'm really starting to get into it. I was a Chat GPT person for a long time, and I still am. But since I use the Microsoft Suite, I wanted to really get into Copilot. And I got to be honest, it was like the Windows 2000 error messages. Every time I would put something in, I was clearly not. And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? This is the Microsoft Office Suite. I'm just asking you to do things that should be easy to do. What is happening?"
Yes.
So, what should I have done differently to get myself trained up and ready to do this?
And that we see that a lot actually. And honestly, when we were showing Copilot, 6 to 9 months ago, it was very much like that. What I would say is that obviously the underlying engine for Copilot as of today is ChatGPT, and depending on your license level, it gets different levels of ChatGPT from that. And so, one to say that's constantly evolving of what that
Okay.
model is. And so, for example, even in January, we did a workshop, and the data analyst in ChatGPT was so much better than the Copilot Excel analyst that we wouldn't even demo it in Copilot because it was so bad. But the new functionality that's coming out is catching up to that from a Copilot
Okay.
perspective. If you're part of the Microsoft Insider Pilot and the stuff that's coming down the pipe in that, it's like actually really impressive of the things that are doing. And what I would say is it's a couple things. One, I would say it's how to do an AI first mindset is what we call that, and to
Mhm.
say how as we're thinking about work to use AI. Copilot is a really interesting one. We're seeing a lot of work in that space because so many people use Microsoft Office products and Microsoft 365, et cetera. Um, and just that ability to integrate with all your emails. And so, for example, like in preparing for this podcast, whatever, our emails back and forth, and to go in and say, hey, look at all my emails with Marianne. Have I done all the things that I said I would do to, get ready for the next thing or whatever? Show me all the action items, and to pull that and have it integrated into all that. Or if I'm writing an email and saying, I want to think about this. And it says, oh, James, you wrote a PowerPoint back in April that's in your SharePoint folder that talks about this exact topic. We could pull in these points from that. And I'm like, that's fantastic. So it's basically taking past self and all my ideas and then applying it to the situation that I'm currently
Yeah.
in. I do wonder if in the future, imagine like, okay, you're at a company, and you have someone and you have all of their past emails and all of their documents they created. Could you make, like, if I leave the company, a James AI agent that could answer all the questions of what I would answer based upon the history of my emails? If I've been there for a decade answering emails and making documents, like that would be interesting to see
Yeah.
in that style if you could do something like that. But I guess to say in general, it's to set your expectations about what you could do in Copilot.
I was getting bold and I was thinking, okay, this whole podcast series. I've got to manage scripts for the smaller podcasts I do.
Hmm.
I have to manage research on the guests for the longer podcasts, et cetera. And I was trying to set up a workflow with lists, SharePoint,
Hmm.
and so I even asked Copilot. I said, "Here's the situation. Here's what I'm doing. How would you?"
Yes.
And Copilot provided me with this great guide, and I thought I was following the guide just so, and no. So
It is
I'm
still a
still gonna
work in
work at it,
progress.
but
I don't think what you're I think what you're saying is that sometimes you just have to see what's working for that and see the use cases that are good. And we see ones that are really great of that organizations are doing some interesting things and we're helping organizations build that. But some of it, it'll say like, oh yes, I can do that and build it. And it builds like a dummy file that doesn't even do the thing that it's supposed to do.
yeah,
So I think you have to watch that. But again, thinking about even the podcast world, if you look at Notebook LM, one of our clients said to us, okay, hey, we're wanting to roll out these new, revenue recognition principles from like a accounting company like Deloitte. And so there's just 800-page documents important to our business to change, but it's just so much to digest. Let's think about how we could use AI to help that. So there's like processes that we could help with. But one of the things we did is we took that 800-page document, put it in Notebook LM and made a podcast for their business about what they need to take away that all of their finance team could listen to on their commute as they're driving in and out of work to think about that and how they could apply it to their business. Again, going back to the technology is changing so fast, but it's
yeah,
how can you help the humans adopt to the ways of business and what's changing easier?
that's awesome. I'm not daunted by my Microsoft experience. I'm gonna be back at it this Friday. So,
Well,
um,
it's the growth mindset. You gotta like fail and learn over and over again. And Copilot, like James said, it's like revolutionized every 2 or 3 months. Like it's totally different now than it was at the
yeah,
beginning of the year. I say totally. It's a lot different now than it was at the beginning of the year. And there's a few little tips and tricks you can do and that sort of thing. We don't need to get into this podcast, but
right.
Yeah.
it's yeah, there's things you can do to get better outcomes from it.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to join us today and tell us, well, just give us the context for how we should be thinking about an AI transformation and adoption. And really appreciate you, um, all the insights gained. Anything else that you'd like to close with?
I would just like to say, thanks for having us on first to say that and it's great to talk about that. And obviously you can feel our passion on this topic. But what I would say to organizations out there is um, there's always a reason not to do something and not to start. And I would just say, again, think about that mindset of 25 or 30 years ago, when the internet was coming out or, Microsoft Excel and you were that accountant that could, close the books faster. And I'm not going to use Excel. I'm not going to use the internet. And to think about that and say, looking back, would that be a good decision? And I would say, just encourage one to say personally to explore and spend time on it and put that in your calendar to try and play with it because like doing any new skill, you're not going to be very efficient at it initially. And if
Mhm.
you just try it and fail, you're not going to get there. But I think if you spend a little time for it, again, the people coming out of our workshops are reporting that they think by practicing the techniques that we see, that in 60 days that they can be saving 2 to 4 hours per week. And so with just by doing some basic prompting and things, not even getting into workflow and all the more complex things we can do. So there's a real opportunity out there, and it's not just buzz. I know there's a lot of the metaverse and Bitcoin. There's been a lot of buzz things in the last decade, but I truly believe that this is one that is going to have a fundamental impact on society.
Great. Matt, anything
Totally
from you?
agree. Yeah, thanks, Marianne. I totally agree with what James said. I mean, we're all about people. That's our business. We're in the people business, not necessarily the AI business. AI is a thing that enables people and will amplify their message, good, maybe even if it's bad. And so we got to be careful for that. But we just see tremendous opportunity for everybody, and they're happy to talk about it and help with it. So thanks
All
for
right.
having us.
Shameless plug time. Where can people find you?
Yeah, on the LinkedIn, James Stovall, Matt Barnes, www.workfastconsulting.com, and or at the Georgia AI Alliance luncheon. So, um, James, I don't know if you want to talk about the
Yeah,
Georgia.
yeah, I can speak of that one. So Matt and I, in addition to our consulting business, created something called Georgia AI Alliance. I know Marianne, you've gotten to come to one of our lunch or to a couple of our lunches, but so we host basically the idea is to say if we have great opportunities in Georgia for citizens and organizations to adopt AI, we believe that's going to create more economic opportunities for Georgians if we can get ahead of this. And so, can we build a community that fosters that learning and foster that? So, I host a monthly networking lunch. And then we'll do, like, for instance, the past 2 months, we've done a free, like, 1 hour webinar about how to improve your prompting skills. So that's a great calendar that you can take a look and see the events out there, and then add events that you're aware of to help build that community, so we can get more of that going. Obviously, we have a lot of people outside of Georgia who participate as well.
So you said the calendar, and it's on the website that can be found
Yes,
at?
georgiaai.org. You can see
Okay.
georgiaai.org. Thank you
All
so much.
right. Perfect. All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks, Marianne.
When you're ready to move from charting the course to making the journey, Klarhet Compass is here to deliver results. Whether it's delivering complex projects, leading transformations, or facilitating leadership workshops, we help business align, collaborate, and deliver. Learn more at k-compass.com.